What's going on, my friends? Katie here, and welcome back to the 36th official episode of the King Darius Experience, where our awakening empowering today is coming by way of understanding how to get people to take action with your content. So we talk a lot about content marketing, we talk a lot about social marketing, we talk a lot about advertising and taking people from initial brand contact to becoming part of your ecosystem and part of your potential customer list or client list, or just fans and community members in your brand or your business. So this episode is for you if you're trying to build revenue and build brand awareness without sacrificing one or the other. And I'm going to be looking at my notes quite a bit because I took a little bit of time to sort of strategically understand the anatomy of how I've been using call to actions in content for myself, for our clients, as well as the people that we're partnering with and collaborating with on content. And I started to see like a lot of patterns, and things that are working for us. So I'm breaking it down into strategically placed call to actions, type of call to actions, and then a couple tips and tricks. So if that sounds like you or something that you could benefit from, tune into this episode because I think it's going to be a beautiful episode for us to hang out and learn this together, because I'm learning as I'm going as well. I never want to take the stance that, oh, I've got this figured out, because marketing and content and social, it's so dynamic. It changes just like the wind, day over day, week over week, month over month. So we could, framework something and sort of like, bullet list it out, and then it could be different in a month, because emerging platforms or different strategies or communities shifting attention or what's happening in the world, there's so many things that change the way and the mechanisms of how things work. So let's hop into strategically placed CTAs. So the reason why content has compound effects in general is because as you build up that storehouse of content, right, which you hear me hear that or say that word storehouse quite a bit. As you build up that storehouse of content, you're essentially dropping another piece of content into your lake or your ocean of content, which is going to attract something, right? It's not going to go unnoticed over time as you continue to publish content. So if you're publishing in all three areas that we always talk about, audio, visual, textual, you have to essentially look at those as opportunities, no different than if you were spending money on ads, right? And it's so interesting how just by the function of something, we completely change the way that we execute against it, when at the end of the day, it's all communication. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're used to advertising. Well, you would never spend money on ads if you didn't know exactly what you were advertising and exactly what you were asking the audience to do call to action wise. But then when we do content marketing, we think it's either we have to ask for something or we don't necessarily know what to do with our content. And I just don't think that's a healthy way of viewing communication in general, because it's all the same. And we've had an episode where we talk about the relationship between organic and paid content before and how it's not different. So if you want to check that out, you can. But this is how we've been strategically placing CTAs for ourselves. So it's broken down into passive call to actions, soft call to actions, strong call to actions, tactical call to actions, and qualifier call to actions. And let me break down what that means essentially. So passive call to actions is when you're referencing work. So this comes from more of like the documenting what's happening, and it's passive because you're essentially saying that you're doing something and it's based in fact, right? I could be talking about a conversation I'm having with a client. I could be talking about a project that I'm working on. I could be talking about an initiative that I'm doing or an execution piece that I'm going through. And as I'm talking through, the nuances of that, there are call to actions in there because I'm doing it no matter whether or not the listener is going to be a part of my ecosystem or not. So the fact in that, the passivity in that, is essentially they're hearing me call to action through my execution, right? So and how that results in something for your brand is they hear you doing something over and over, anything from selling dog food to selling services to selling products to e-com, like whatever it is. And if they are that type of persona, similar to the people you're already working with, executing with, creators you're already creating with, then they're going to qualify themselves or bring themselves a little bit closer to your brand because you're passively talking about all the things you're doing, which is sort of attracting them in an interesting way. The second one is soft call to actions, and this is more of your interest-based or indirect call outs, right? So I use soft call to actions quite a bit in my content, where it's like, hey, if you're interested in learning more about this, we have this over here, or hey, there's actually a little bit more in depth of this kind of information on the site, or you can watch the King Darius Experience here. However, if you want the full breakout, the article, the links, the additional information, it's on the Sacred World. And then if you're over there, there's usually soft call to actions, what I've noticed is that it's different. It's like channels talking to each other almost. You're saying, hey, if you want more information, it's over here, but you're not necessarily punching them in the face with that. Then strong call to actions are you're actually taking a part of the content, like taking time or taking real estate out of the content, depending if it's audio, visual, or textual, to say, go do this exact thing, right? So you're not beating around the bush and you're actually saying, this is what I want you to do. And then this is where it starts to get interesting, as I was kind of evaluating. And you don't necessarily have to call them, passive, soft, strong, tactical, and qualifier. That's just sort of the, I guess, language or rhetoric I put behind it. But it's going to get interesting because tactical call to actions are sort of like using a trigger, right? And this is very common in marketing because like time, limited number, last chance, all that kind of stuff. But you don't necessarily have to do it through a strong call to action. Like I don't have to say, I have a limited amount of seats, so that you have to do this. I only have this amount of time until I jack up the price, so you have to do this, right? This is your last chance to ever get, because none of that stuff is technically true, and people are sort of privy to, marketing cadences like that, if you will. But you can get tactical with it, right? You can sort of show what people are doing in the background or how they're engaging with your brand to tactically add urgency onto them also taking action. So it's sort of that fear of missing out. If you can display that other people are taking action, it kind of adds urgency to the right qualified people. And then, which brings me into the last one, which is qualifier call to action. So some people are just, lurkers and observers of your content. They could be connected to you for whatever reason. They could be in your network for whatever reason, primary, secondary, tertiary connections through any social network, through any offline event, whatever it is. And if you create sort of like these gates, if you will, both on social media or your web platforms and that kind of stuff, where people actually have to meet a certain criteria or, potentially even apply for something to engage with your brand on a deeper level, other than just consuming your content, this can be where your larger transactions and your exclusivity comes in. And this is where, for myself as a service-based business, I have seen the most results is my qualifier call to actions, right? So it's essentially, if you're reading my content, if you're watching my content, if you're listening to my content, it's eventually going to trickle back into a qualifier call to action. And let me give you an example. You may be on Instagram and see a spotlight video of mine, which is essentially just a 60-second clip out of one of my longer form pieces of content, like the King Darius experience. Then I add all the elements to it, like you've seen before, titles, loading bars, transitions, the logo sting, so they know it's the podcast, the reference, so it's episodic and they can know that there's depth of content there. And then if somebody were to see that and actually take action, right, because those are all soft call to actions and some of those other ones we were talking about there, and go watch the full experience of the King Darius experience, they may be on asacredworld.com and reading the article, right? All of this is linked, all of this is set up on my social accounts, and we have people that go and read the in-depth version. Well, in the in-depth version of my King Darius experience, there are links to there with reference phrases. So if I say something like, social marketing strategy or something like that, I may link that to the social marketing strategy page on Sacred Media House, which is my agency, the service-based business, right? So let's say 100 people, let's say 150 people watch the Instagram video. Let's say 13 of them or 15, well, let's round up and say it's a good day. 20 of them go to the website to, consume the full version of it. And then 2 of those people click the link and 1 of them contact me. So they have behaved themselves into deeper layers of my content just because I was strategically placing different types of call to actions within the content, because you don't want anybody coming in contact with your brand from a transactional level, because that's not beneficial for you over time. You want the right people coming in contact with your brand. So you sort of have to make them go through layers. And Swole Normus and I talk about this all the time. We talk about essentially the way you want to do it is you want to set up, landmines and sort of like barbed wire for people to go through. So it's like, if you want to, work with me or purchase from me or, engage with me on that sort of like partnership level, aside from just being a consumer in general, or, watching the content and that sort of stuff and interacting with the brand, then you're going to have to go through landmines and barbed wire to get there, because not anybody can just, work with us on a transactional level, because we want to be working with the right creators, because that aligns with our vision, which means we get to tell better stories, which means we get to attract more people who are just like the people we're already serving. So you have to protect your brand's sort of like equity, if you will, and keep the purity of your message and your vision by strategically placing call to actions that sort of, self-qualify people into your brand. And that's how it works, passive call to actions, soft call to actions, strong call to actions, tactical call to actions, and qualifier call to action. So that is strategically placed call to actions, working in real time. And I think over time, that is going to be something that a lot of people, really experience results from, and sort of in an unexpected way. Because when you think of content, you don't, draw a straight line initially by instinct and think, oh, I post content, therefore I make money. Like very, 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 very few people would ever think or approach content like that. However, when you can start to see the trail of how your strategically placed call to actions are talking to each other and qualifying people, it makes sense why a video you posted, 17 days ago resulted into somebody reading something 10 days ago, which resulted into that, same person contacting you 3 days ago, which resulted into a call, which resulted into a, $7,000 contract or whatever it is, or some type of consultation, or and then if you have multiple things of those going out every day, every week, that really starts to be compound interest and opportunities for your brand. So the next thing I want to talk about, building off of strategically placed call to actions, is the type of call to actions that you're using. So it's one thing to place them, but what type of call to actions are you using? And I'm going to break this down by the three sort of types of content that we talk about all the time: audio, visual, textual, and I'll do them in that exact order. So with audio, the places you can use obviously are your intros, your outros, your segments, and your caption links. But the elements is where I want you to pay attention to. And I have this written down. So if you're watching the video experience anywhere, LinkedIn, Facebook, A Sacred World, I think I'm posting long versions of this on Instagram as well. And obviously YouTube is the core place I'm posting the visual experience. That's why I'm looking down on my phone often, because now we're getting into the tactical stuff. Elements, any frequency or audio design that stands out from the main audio. And this sort of comes from, my buddy Jeremy, who does a lot of our audio engineering and stuff like that. And we create music on the side too. Anything music or anything audio, him and I have always been into. But frequencies that stand out, because you don't have the luxury in audio to catch people's eyes. Obviously, that's a sense that's not being tapped into. So you have to have frequency ranges that are outside of what they're used to hearing. So what this is materializing as is changing vocal and audio style, pace, and cadence, adding maybe dings, impacts, whooshes, rumbles, risers. And what I mean by that, for example, is let's say right now I wanted to do some sort of call to action, right? And let's say we'll go real cheesy so you can kind of, hear the example. And I want to, let me go ahead and, advertise these Nature's Bounty C 500 milligram sort of vitamins that I take every once in a while here. And I would maybe change the pace of what I'm talking. So right now I'm talking sort of like a marketer, real fast, not really, taking breaths and all that kind of stuff. Hey guys, before we hit the next section of this podcast, I just want to tell you that, for me, focus as an entrepreneur is really important. And one of the things that I do is when I feel like I can't focus or I haven't had the opportunity to get outside, as much as I want to, I actually like to take 500 milligram vitamin C tablets from Nature's Bounty, keep it right on my desk. So it sort of, within 20, 30 minutes, I start to feel a little bit livened up and stuff like that. Like I, drank a glass of orange juice or, sat in the sun or got some vitamins, whatever. It starts to feel good for me. And that helps me be more productive and stay focused as an entrepreneur and a content creator, which ultimately makes everything that I do a little bit more effective. So if you don't have it, go ahead and, go grab one of these. You see how just even changing the cadence of how I was talking in that moment completely separated that audio moment from the core piece or the core body of this content. Now, if I were to, in post-production, add some type of ding or wish or whatever, which I might have done, I might not have done, I never know, before we start doing the post-production process. But there's a lot of marketplaces and stuff you can use to get these sounds and sort of, add these elements to your audio. And we're actually going to be posting something very soon. Jeremy and I working on a marketplace that has all of these sounds, that has backtracks, that has elements that you can use so you can make your content a little bit more effective. So that's audio, right? Making sure that there's some sort of frequency or cadence or tone difference in what you're doing or saying when you are putting call to actions inside of your audio content. Then if we go into video content, intros, outros, segments, video bugs, CTA screens, which is just call to action screens, and caption links. And then obviously you can do this through video show openers and all that kind of stuff. So let me actually pause there for a second because I'll give you a few examples. So let's say KD Music, for example. One of the reasons I get a lot of streams on different platforms like YouTube Music, Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, not so much anymore. But I'm still good. I mean, I think I have a total of 30,000 streams there organically or whatever. But the reason why they're all kind of ticking at the same time, a main reason is the sort of, and I'm only saying this by term, this is not how either one of us think of it, but that influencer relationship between myself and somebody like Swolenormous, right? We have been collaborating on marketing and fitness and music for the last 4 or 5 years. So one of the things that he does is at the beginning of every single one of his episodes, while there's sort of like a 3 or 4 minute waiting period, because when you tell people you're going live streaming and he's sending out text messages and emails and sort of all of that automated stuff that gets people to know he's going live for a show, you want sort of like a 90 to 120-second window there for people to come in before you just start giving your value away. So he uses loading screens that are playing my music in the background with my name in the bottom left corner, and he does an episode every single day, literally since we met. I think he's on 1586 or 87, days in a row. And he started doing that, I would say, halfway through the podcast or 75% of the way through those numbers. So it's been a solid, I would say at least 500 episodes of using, my music in the beginning. Then on the end of his YouTube content, right, we're starting to use sort of like ending CTA screens, call to action screens, where it's him. He's in his different photography poses and all that kind of stuff. He has call to actions that are channel based with YouTube cards and ending screens and all that kind of stuff. But then again, there's a little tab in the bottom right corner that says King Darius or King Darius Music. It has whatever single cover of the song that he's playing and where they can listen to the music, and that's happening on all of the content that he's putting out, for his other channels. So that's like if you were having a partnership or a collaboration. If you're doing it for yourself, there's times when I've done, dish out ad segments inside of the King Darius Experience, which is just a service, that we offer for Sacred Media House. There's times that I do stuff in the beginning, stuff at the end. When I'm on social, there's times where I'll do like quick transitions or little sort of like pop in elements and bugs on the screen that, invoke people to go check it out or link in bio or do this or take action or comment below or your takeaway here. So with video, because you have visual, you can sort of mix and play and design around both visual design and audio design and make them talk together. So that way, your content and your call to actions for your video content have quite a bit more stickiness and traction. And then finally with textual, what you can do is inline links, or they call it, backlinking or whatever officially in SEO, and graphics and content reference, right? So content that's in a different place. And that goes back to the example I showed you where I sort of followed the trail back from somebody watching my forward facing content to becoming, Sacred Media House clients or part of the Sacred Media House dish out program or consultation or what have you. And so we do this quite a bit. It helps to, take a little bit more time to really break out your content. If you have to get it transcribed, you can. If you have to do like sort of like an overview or show notes and, provide a little bit more robustness and granular information and context, that always helps too. But anything you can do to make interactive content like audio and visual content a little bit more textual, so you have the elements of textual call to actions playing in your favor as well. And then obviously there's textual elements to social captions and all that kind of stuff too, which I want to get into the tips and tricks section of the podcast and talk about sort of how you can use some of those, right? So let's stay on the social captions. Let's say you wanted to put a call to action in your social caption. I have found that the best place to place those is at the end of whatever you're saying, because again, a lot of people in marketing, for as long as I can remember, at least in my career and what I've observed, they always talk about putting call to actions like front and center. If you're on a website, it's got to be above the fold. If it's on a social media post, it's got to be right there. If it's a Facebook ad, it's got to be a button. If it's on a article, it's got to be a section or a breakout or a page break or whatever it is. And I've never really liked this style of marketing because for me, I've always been like real-time communicator, and this is what I talk about like conversational marketing or behavioral marketing. Whereas like if you're walking in a grocery store and you saw somebody that you're familiar with but haven't seen in a while, you wouldn't say, like, hey, it's nice to see you, hey, come over to dinner immediately, like, and then just shove call to actions in their face, right? Because that's not how we communicate, and that's not how we act in the real world. So a lot of times we behave or we market differently than we behave and consume ourselves. So what I have found works is passive and soft call to actions when it comes to specifically social content. So a little PS at the end, or a little line break and then saying, hey, link in bio, or if you want to learn more about this, or, one time I told Jordan's story of, building her social content and personal brand on TikTok as that was building out. And then I said at the bottom of that post, I said, hey, if you're interested in learning more about personal branding, just DM me personal brand, like in quotation marks. Had quite a few people do that. So again, if you do it sort of as of like a passive afterthought, like, oh yeah, and by the way, oh yeah, then people feel a little bit less like intruded, and it disarms them and allows them to view your brand as, hey, value first, hey, collaboration first, hey, entertainment first, hey, education first. And by the way, I enjoyed that, so let me actually take action on that and do something with it. Another tip and trick, and this is 2 out of 3, is do not create a business that uses strong call to actions every time. This is like the number one mistake that I see creators and business owners make all of the time. Is every time I talk, I'm just going to have a huge call to action, or, go watch this whole thing, or go listen to my whole album, or go listen to my whole single. And I was just talking to a client the other day as we were onboarding. And I was like, because I always like to do this. I always like to break down, like, hey, how did you come in contact with us? What was it that actually made you make the decision? And so that way I can sort of repeat this and get insights on, why you're here, because we love it. And when we started breaking it down, I was like, hey, have you ever heard me, aside from a couple of times, say, come hire Sacred Media House? And he was like, now that I think about it, no. And I was like, okay, so I only asked that because I want to show you a meta example of I didn't call to action you here. And it was kind of like a cool moment of like, wow, it's working in real time, even for internally for what we're doing as well. So it was just kind of like a cool moment. And I just wanted to communicate that to you guys, because the people who buy from you are people that trust you, not people that got smacked in the face with a call to action. So you just got to be careful with building a brand that only uses strong call to actions. And then the final tip that I have for you today is something that we do at Sacred Media House, but we use masked call to actions, and that's that entire process that I was talking about earlier. If you pull that segment back to this tip and trick section, where essentially you make all of those things talk together, and then the barbed wire and the landmines lead all the way back to somebody actually having transactional value for you and your business. And this goes across products, this goes across services, and this goes across selling attention, regardless of what you are buying or selling in a marketplace and doing or trying to lead to. Maybe you're just in the content game right now and you don't necessarily have a monetization infrastructure. That's fine. But masking your call to actions like that by using diverse call to actions and not just strong ones every time, allow your business to stay in a place where forward facing, it's all value, it's all entertainment, it's all enjoyment, right? It's all escapism, it's all of those things, education, and things that people don't have to feel like, like the whole Drake meme, like, strong call to actions, and then it's like value, it's just like, let's stop being sort of leveragers, if you will. If it was leveraging that works, then it would be called professional leveragers, not professional marketers. You know what I'm saying? So just be careful with those things. And hopefully this episode is helping you kind of realize that content works when you make it work. Content works when you strategically place call to actions in there, when you diversify how you're asking people to engage with your brands. And that's how these things work. And that's how people qualify themselves into your brand. That's how you monetize the things that you care about, and ultimately grow the things that can sustain over time and not, stop growing once you stop doing them. So other than that, we will see you in the next episode of the King Darius Experience. Peace.
Yeah, we ride around this ghost. If we show up, then we still have it. Yeah, we slide around this coast. Yeah, we glowing up, but we still trapped, sitting high up on the throne. When my foes out, got the world clapping. Yeah, we vibing up in this show. So your main girl in the private section. Yeah, we ride around this ghost. If we show up, then we still have it. Yeah, we slide around this coast. Yeah, we glowing up, but we still trapped, sitting high up on this throne. When my foes out, got the world clapping. Yeah, we vibing up in this show. So your main girl in the private section. Yeah, glowing up, but we we still trapped. That's how a nigga survives. Flowing out, got the crowd packed, yeah, that's how a nigga provides. Y'all insta this, y'all snap that, y'all diss this, and they snap back another mass shooting.